Good morning. Today I will be signing a disaster proclamation allowing the state to speed up the procurement of the immediate resources needed to help Chicago, Cook County, and other jurisdictions provide humanitarian assistance to the asylum seekers who are being sent to our state with no official advance notice. At the request of our local partners, I'll also ask members of the National Guard to assist in the preparation of infrastructure and services needed to handle the incoming arrivals. The state of Illinois is doing everything in its power to support local jurisdictions to help ensure that the right tools and supports are in place as we move forward with this humanitarian response. Let me be clear, while other states may be treating these vulnerable families as pawns, here in Illinois, we are treating them as people. And when a person comes urgently seeking help, here in Illinois, we offer them a helping hand. It's who we are, and it's the right thing to do. I know that there are some who are grumbling and upset that hotels or motels in their communities are opening their doors to strangers in need, arguing that they received short notice. So let's talk about the challenges presented to the city of Chicago and to the state. Remember, the governor of the state of Texas is choosing not to notify the city or the state when he is sending busloads of families. The state government of Texas has been non-responsive when agencies like Human Services, Public Health, State Police, or Emergency Management reach out to them. We hear about buses arriving only through unofficial means. For example, from Texas nonprofit organizations on the ground that are attempting to help these migrants. And that's not because they're receiving any official notice from the state of Texas either. No, in many cases, it's because they've just literally watched the bus drive by. The NGOs don't know who is on the buses, and the governor of Texas is choosing not to tell them or to tell Chicago how many people are on the buses before they arrive. They won't tell us how many infants, or children, seniors, or families are on board. They won't tell us what route they take or when they will arrive. They won't provide any information that would actually help their fellow Americans welcome and care for these human beings. What the governor of Texas is doing is a stunt, and he's playing games with people's lives. We have tried to direct the buses to reception centers in Chicago that we have prepared for the arrivals. But the state of Texas instead chooses to send them to Union Station, dumping these human beings off in the dead of night. Once the arriving families are gathered up, city and state staff members work with expert nonprofit organizations like the state-funded welcoming centers, Catholic Charities, and Salvation Army to begin to triage and determine their immediate needs, prioritizing infants, children, seniors, and families. From the beginning, staff have worked day and night to find safe shelter and bring some sense of stability to vulnerable families after an arduous journey. Remember that all of these folks are in the U.S. seeking asylum as refugees, meaning they trekked thousands of miles away from their home countries, seeking protection from oppression, persecution, or serious human rights violations. It also means that they are here legally, while their asylum cases are being heard. When they're given permission to cross the southern border, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol conducts a series of screenings. First, biometric screenings, including facial scans and fingerprints so that they are cross-checked against terrorist watch lists and criminal databases. They're also undergoing an initial health screening there. Every one of the asylum seekers that arrives here receives a second health screening at a Chicago reception center to check for and help treat signs of illness, trauma, or injury, or the need for vaccinations or other care. Just as Illinois did when Afghan refugees arrived last year, we have existing grantees and contracts for places that house new immigrants. The difference is that we received notice weeks ahead of time of the Afghans' arrival. These recent asylum seekers are being sent here from Texas without notice, and we often have between 3 and 24 hours to find shelter for potentially 100 or more people. I'm not going to mince words here. The governor of Texas is forcing on New York and D.C. and Chicago and potentially other places a needlessly last-minute and complex process that is a heartless display of politics over people. Why not give reasonable notice? Why send these folks only to blue cities or blue states? Why isn't Abbott sending refugees to Mississippi or Oklahoma or Idaho? This is about politics for him, without regard to the fear and anguish and the challenges that it poses for these refugees. But here in Illinois, we refuse to stoop to that man's level. That's why I'm signing this proclamation today, to ensure that these men, women, and children get the services they need: shelter, food, medicine. These are services that they need and they deserve. I am also temporarily deploying 75 members of our National Guard to assist in this effort. These are logistics professionals who will help local governments receive and transport new arrivals, stand up additional housing as needed, and support local government and nonprofits on the ground. I'm calling the National Guard into action on a temporary basis while we put in place additional staffing on the ground. I'm also pursuing every federal resource available to assist in this response. I've personally spoken with members of our congressional delegation to ensure that this is a top priority for them. Now I'd like to talk about the people at the center of all of this. These are people who are in our country legally. I repeat, they have been screened at the border and they have legal permission to temporarily reside in our country. They are asylum seekers, fleeing oppression or persecution in their own countries. They have traveled for months, most often without enough food or medicine or support. Many have literally walked from Venezuela to the U.S. border, seeking safety for themselves and for their families. These are people who have not been accused of doing anything wrong. But upon arrival here, there have been some anti-immigrant people who have tried to label these refugees with vicious suspicions about drugs and guns, accusations of which there is literally not a shred of evidence. The arriving families are poor and they are people of color, and that's apparently all some people need to level baseless accusations. These asylum seekers are women and children, infants and the elderly, mothers and fathers. They are human beings like you and me. Some have a sponsor in Chicago who will care for them. Others have a sponsor elsewhere in the country, and they are moving on once they are rested up. Sometimes they arrive with just the clothes on their backs, the courage to have made this long journey to escape oppression in hopes that America, a land mostly of immigrants, will give them a new chance at peace and freedom. This is not a time to demonize human beings. This is a time to live up to our values. And in Illinois, we will follow the moral compass that makes this one of the greatest states in the nation. While there are a few local officials who want to play politics around these people's lives, I want to tell you about the kind and generous spirit of many other officials who have quietly extended a helping hand with offers of assistance, donations, and critical supplies. Leaders like Countryside Mayor Sean McDermott, who has welcomed families seeking refuge into his community. He represents the Illinois that I know, one we can all be proud of. Finally, to Governor Greg Abbott. Now is the time to stop trying to sow the seeds of chaos, to put aside politics and focus on human rights. Communicate with us. Have your state agencies call us back. Spare us the unnecessary drama and let us go about the work to resettle these asylum seekers. If you intend to continue shipping people across the country, please offer us the basic courtesy of a week's notice or more before you send busloads so that we can give exhausted refugees, including elderly people, young mothers and their babies, and the immediate opportunity to attain some stability and peace. I want to thank our IDHS Secretary Grace Ho, our IDPH Director Samir Vora, Major General Rich Neely of the Illinois National Guard, and IEMA Director Alicia Tate-Nadeau for their steadfast leadership. I'm so honored to stand alongside Lieutenant Governor Stratton and members of the Latino Caucus as we work together to provide dignity for these arriving families. And of course, to our city and county leaders, Mayor Lori Lightfoot and President Toni Preckwinkle, I'm very pleased that the state can offer our support in your effort to support these asylum seekers. And with that, I'm pleased to turn the podium over to Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Mayor, thank you.
This podium was clearly not made for someone who's vertically challenged like me, so I just want to say this before I get into my prepared remarks. Governor, your leadership on this issue really is so critically important, and I'm so pleased to be working with you as a state leader. I have to say a special thanks to Secretary Ho. I have to say also to Deputy Governor Sal Flores, Madam President. Cook County has really been a tremendous partner in this work. A month ago, none of us thought that we'd be here, but I think the fact that the government at every level is working together in a coordinated fashion, and the unsung heroes who are working literally night and day, been on tireless calls to all hours of the night and day, that are at these facilities, literally sleeping there to make sure that the residents, that the migrants who are coming have the support that they need. I got to give a shout out to my team in the mayor's office, Nubia Willman, Rich Gaitis, Chief of Staff Sybil Madison, and so many others. This is what public service truly means. We are living our values. We're not just saying it and talking about it. We are living our values, and I am very, very proud of the work that's being done at all levels of government here to make sure that the words of welcoming state and the words of welcoming city have true meaning every single day. So I just have to thank all of you so incredibly much about what's happened. Let me give you a little bit of an update from the city perspective. Since Governor Abbott created this manufactured crisis, approximately 500 migrants have come to the city of Chicago since August 31st. We do expect this number to grow. We started out with 1 or 2 buses, and now we're seeing a regular cadence. Now, to be clear, as the governor said, and it's 100% true, Governor Abbott clearly has mandated that no one in Texas government, not the social services agencies, not the Texas Rangers, or anyone else, can provide us with any information or notice. The normal lines of communication that we have with state leaders, particularly when it comes to issues of emergency management or law enforcement, he has shut those off from us. So it is a manufactured crisis by ambush, to be very clear. Nonetheless, we have stood tall and worked together, and we will continue to do so. I will say that I welcome Governor Pritzker's declaration today of the state of emergency because, as you heard, it frees up resources from a procurement perspective, but also from the National Guard. And I want to take this moment to thank General Neely, as I have many times over these last couple of years, and also General Tate-Nadeau, when we have come together in crisis, and COVID is the most recent example. The state emergency management authorities and the National Guard have done tremendous, tremendous work. Think, for example, what happened when we set up a vaccination center at the United Center parking lot. The state National Guard was phenomenal in providing resources, as was the state FEMA. I have no doubt that they will stand tall in this moment as well. So I just want to thank you all for that. We need their support to help us organizing the provision of basic needs like food and medical support and assisting us in the movement of people from place to place. This support will support our goal to provide these new arrivals with a warm welcome and allow them to figure out their next steps. I also want to highlight another point that the governor made. Now, Governor Abbott doesn't see the humanity in any of these people, but we do. And I think you heard that directly from Governor Pritzker. And we dare not lose sight of the fact that these are our brothers and sisters, that these folks have a right to be in a country, and that we have an obligation as a result of that to make sure that we stand up and provide support for them. As the governor said, some will be staying in the Chicagoland area. Some have already plans to go elsewhere in the country. But we have at a bare minimum the obligation to provide them with support as they make this transition from the border to the city of Chicago. They have traveled, in many instances, 4 months on foot through difficult circumstances. And they have been shipped on buses. And frankly, I believe that they have been misled. And the only option for them that they've been presented to by the folks in Texas is a free bus ride, because they're not providing any other option to them to go elsewhere into the country where many of them would prefer to go. This is, again, an orchestrated plan to create chaos in Democratic-controlled cities. Make no mistake about it. We've seen pregnant women literally ready to give birth who've been provided next to no support on the buses. Babies, elders, who continue to be treated in a callous manner until they get to the city of Chicago. It's unacceptable. It shouldn't be like this, but it speaks volumes about who Governor Abbott is. And on top of the visible challenges that these folks have faced, there are also those invisible wounds that they have endured and carry with them because of the trauma that they have experienced in their home countries and during their trek from Venezuela to our shores. So imagine experiencing all of this just to be put on a bus with no options for multiple hours, limited food, and limited opportunities for respite, and just getting dropped off without any idea of what the next steps are going to be. We dare not forget the humanity of these men and women and their families. Governor Abbott's political stunt continues to put lives at risk and add unnecessary trauma to the lives of people, human beings, who are simply trying to find safety and start a new life. Neither he nor anyone from his team in Texas will communicate with us. And as I said before, it's clearly there's a mandate, no information. Let them figure it out once the buses arrive. And Governor Pritzker is right that the lack of communication from Texas is creating an intentional chaos to reignite anti-immigrant sentiment and attempt to strain democratic city systems, especially here in Washington, D.C. and in New York. We will not let his plan work. We absolutely will not let that happen. And that's because here in Chicago, we stand united to help migrants get the help, support, and resources that they need. Let me also talk about 2 other points before I yield the podium. The federal government has to step up. I was in Washington, D.C. last week talking to members of Customs and Border Patrol, National FEMA, ICE, and DHS. And we made it very clear, I made it very clear, that our expectation is that they were going to have a plan that features communication and collaboration with interior cities. And they must do that, and they must do that soon. I know that they are under enormous pressures This is not a new challenge at the border, but this is a new challenge for us, and we need federal support, resources, communication, and collaboration, and that has to come in short order. What I will also say, as I said there, any dollar that goes to the state of Texas or the state of Arizona or any other state that is advocating its responsibility and manufacturing this crisis in our cities, every single one of those dollars needs to be committed to cities like Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. We should not, and taxpayer dollars should not be used to pay for this kind of callous, inhumane treatment on the part of someone who is racing to the bottom for a political stunt. Those monies need to be reprogrammed and come to us to help support the efforts that we are engaged in to support the migrants who are coming to our cities. I also want to make sure that we continue to talk to, as I have, with our suburban mayors and village town presidents. I think we've had some productive conversations over the last few days, and we need to make sure that they are in the loop. No mayor wants folks coming to their city without advance notice to be able to ask all the questions and frankly be in a position to answer the questions of their residents. That is right and it's fair, and we're going to do our part to make sure that happens. So I will just say this. Thank goodness we live in a state with leadership at all levels that recognizes that we must do this work. As a person of faith, I believe that we must see God's presence in all human beings, that we cannot pick and choose, that we are all God's children, and we are all in different circumstances in the arc of our life, but for those who are vulnerable, who need our help, we must be there for them. That's what being a good Christian is. So Governor Abbott makes lots of proclamations about his faith and who he is. What he is doing is not in keeping with what I know of Christianity, what I know of being a person of faith. It is not. And you've seen that the actions have been denounced by lots of different religious leaders, and rightfully so. But once again, I just want to say thank you. Thanks to all the team at all levels that is doing incredible work to help support these residents in a time of need. And now I will turn it over to our great Lieutenant Governor, Governor Stratton. Lieutenant Governor Stratton.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for that warm introduction and for ensuring that Chicago is welcoming for all. And thank you, Governor Pritzker, for leading our state with empathy and compassion, especially in a time when the people of Illinois need that the most. I'm always proud to stand by your side as your partner in governance. And thank you, Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle, Senator Selena Villanueva, Leader Lisa Hernandez, and everyone who is standing with us today and making it clear that we will stand up and speak out as one united voice. We are here today because people matter. A person's humanity is universal, and it is not tied to their race, their religion, their country of origin, or the zip code where they live. When we help others, we grow stronger ourselves. And when we lift others, we rise ourselves. And when we recognize the humanity in others, we see the compassion within ourselves. In Illinois, we recognize the humanity of everyone and push back hard against those who do not. In these tough times, we must commit to doing the right thing. Today and beyond, Illinois is doing just that. Let me be clear. It is not a difficult choice to open our arms and give migrants the humanity and care they deserve. What makes this hard, what makes this painful for so many, is that they are being shuffled around like pawns and not being treated as human beings, as people, like you or I would want to be treated. These migrants, immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers are seeking a better life and yearning to breathe free, to find a place to call home and build a new life. They cannot, should not be talked about and treated in a way that is dehumanizing and callous because of where they come from or the color of their skin, that only serves further xenophobic and racist rhetoric. Today, we as a state must stand and say, we are here for you. And honestly, that should be the reality everywhere. What Texas Governor Greg Abbott has done is wrong. But we will step up to set the record straight. Illinois welcomes you, and we stand with our immigrant communities to ensure our state is a home for everyone. We stand with the leaders of the Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus to continue working to expand justice and equity, to break down barriers that hurt our most vulnerable. And when others rely on fear-mongering and cruelty towards migrants, we will lead with heart and show that we cannot be knocked down because our diversity makes us stronger. Thank you, and I will now pass it over to Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Governor Pritzker for hosting us today and for the strong partnership between the state and the county and the city as we've come together in our commitment to ensure a warm welcome to our newest residents. As each bus arrives, we stand together and say welcome. As I often note, Cook County government has a nearly 200-year history of providing critical services and meaningful assistance to those in need across all communities. We are proud to be a safe and welcoming county for all who choose to visit or reside here. I'm personally committed to this mission each and every day, and I'm grateful for the partnerships we have in place to fulfill this important work. Beginning 2 weeks ago, asylum seekers arrived here looking for opportunity in the face of uncertainty. And while we are ready to welcome them, our colleagues in the state of Texas refused to coordinate their arrival in a way that ensured human kindness. This has, unfortunately, created a challenge of unnecessary uncertainty. And Cook County has risen to that challenge, bringing the unique services of Cook County Health and the Cook County government to support this work, doing so in partnership and collaboration with the state and the city, putting the interests of individuals and families first to ensure their basic needs are met upon arrival. I'd like to say a particular thank you to the Cook County Department of Emergency Management and Regional Security Executive Director Ted Berger and his team for providing coordination and support with our city, state, and federal and not-for-profit partners. I'm also grateful for Cook County's deployment of personnel and resources to assist the City of Chicago and the State of Illinois, working collaboratively to identify solutions on the limited notice we've been given during this challenging circumstance. I also want to extend my gratitude to the Chief Executive Officer of Cook County Health, Israel Rocha, and Ileana Mora, Chief Operating Officer of Ambulatory Services at Cook County Health, for their tireless efforts to provide screenings, primary care, vaccinations, and other medical services to our new arrivals. In the coming days and weeks, Cook County government continues to work side by side with our partners and newest residents to make sure that their needs are met. It's a privilege to continue the county's long-held commitment to immigrants in our community. And now I'd like to welcome to the podium Secretary Hope.
Good morning to you all. It's a pleasure to join you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, Senator Villanueva, thank you, President Preckwinkle, and Mayor Lightfoot. I want to thank you all for your unwavering commitment to ensuring that Illinois serves as a welcoming state. Since August 31st, when the first 2 buses arrived, we've been working with the City of Chicago and Cook County to respond to the needs of babies, pregnant women, children, teens, adults, and older people. And we have been unnecessarily scrambling to ensure that they have a safe place to sleep, food, baby formula, health care, and other basic supports. We are now 11 buses deep, And we know from speaking with our counterparts in New York and DC that this will not relent. From day one, I have said to our team, we live in a state where our leaders are committed to providing a dignified welcome to our state. That is not the question. The question is how we do it when the process is intentionally designed to cause confusion and utter chaos. Last night, Chicago welcomed its 11th bus, which arrived late this morning, totaling more than 500 asylum seekers in the past 14 days. These individuals and family members are arriving in our state, our people. They are us. They are our parents. They are our grandparents or our great-grandparents who are fleeing terror or violence and are seeking something better in our country for themselves and their children. They find themselves as neighbors here because in Texas, some were told that Chicago is the only option for them. Others were told you could pick from Chicago, New York, or DC. Some were told to pick Chicago in Illinois because we are welcoming here and we have more job opportunities. Within a blink of an eye, within moments, they are asked to make a life decision, and they do it. They make a life choice that led them to our state. We at the Department of Human Services are naming our efforts here, welcoming with dignity. Human dignity is the least we can promise. Our teams, both city and state, have worked tirelessly for 2 weeks to do that. Today, the state of Illinois, our governor, is using his authority to bring and accelerate resources for us to meet that promise of dignity. We will utilize the National Guard's men and women to relieve staff who have been working around the clock in hotels to scale up until we can get ahead of this, build the infrastructure to sustain the effort. We will look to other welcoming communities through our state to also help resettle these individuals. I have seen the laughter of these children, the smiles of these babies, the relief in the eyes of parents. They are joyful, they are fearful, they are expectant and cautiously hopeful, but they are absolutely full of promise. The adults want to work, the children want to learn and play and draw. They want to play soccer, and they want to feel safe. So there have been many questions about how we've identified hotel rooms. Well, I would say to anyone who has had the privilege of planning or hosting a large wedding or a conference, you will know that finding a block of rooms for 100 people usually takes over a year. And as the governor said, sometimes we have 3 hours, sometimes we have 12 hours. So in addition to just plain availability, we want to assure that those regions also have the access to support services. And we've also returned to hotels that have previously welcomed Afghans earlier this year. With support from the National Guard, we can work ahead more strategically in built-up shelter capacity and other types of settings. Alongside Commissioner Kanazi of DFSS, Director Vora, Director Tien, and other Illinois agencies, we are working in close collaboration with our Illinois Welcoming Centers. Onward House, Brighton Park Neighborhood Association, Rincon Family Services and Family Focus, along with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights and the Resurrection Project, and the Greater Chicago Food Depository. Thank you to our partners. They were only a phone call or a text away from springing to action. We know we can do this together, and we know that there will be many more challenging days ahead, but we are united in our mission, and today will enable us to endure. With that, I am really pleased to welcome Senator Villanueva, a partner and an advocate, to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Selena Villanueva. I represent the 11th District, which encompasses a good portion of the southwest side of the city, including neighborhoods like Little Village and Brighton Park, West Lawn, and portions of the adjacent southwest suburbs as well. Before I get into my remarks, I think I want to make sure that we thank the different levels of government that have been working tirelessly. And when I tell you this, I mean this, because I'm coming from community work. I am an organizer. And to see our government, city, county, state government working the way that they have been working to ensure that we're all meeting the moment. Thank you, Governor Pritzker. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam President, for the tireless work that you all are doing, that your staff is doing, Director Ho. There's so many incredible people and staffs and volunteers and staff at community-based organizations, our welcoming centers that are meeting the moment every single moment. As we are sitting here having this press conference, who are there making sure that there are people that are present, welcoming those buses that are getting here, that are making sure that the people that are arriving into our city are getting the medical support that they need. They're there making sure that they have food to eat and that they have a roof over their heads. We are on the eve of Hispanic Heritage Month, which starts tomorrow. A month that is meant to celebrate and to highlight the accomplishments, but also the culture, our heritage of Latinos in the United States. We're on the eve of a very big month for those of us in the Latino caucus, of a lot of celebrations, but a lot of reflection. This past weekend, I was with my community in Little Village celebrating the 51st year of the 26th Mexican Independence Day Parade. 51 years. And let me tell you, Latino communities have been here longer than that. Immigrants have been here longer than that in this country and in this city. But 51 years. And as a daughter of Little Village, because that is my home, I will always proclaim my love for Little Village. I shared a story at the breakfast before the parade of when I was a young girl walking out of a grocery store in Little Village with my mom. And we ran into a man, a Mexican man, asking my mom if she could spare a couple of pesos for some tacos. This man was a recent arrival, and my mother had been working in the community for a very long time at that point. And instead of my mother just walking by and saying and ignoring the man, my mother stopped and actually talked to him about 10, 15 minutes to get his story, to understand how he got here, where he was living, to make sure that he was okay. What she found out was that he was living in a garage with about 4 or 5 other men, recent arrivals who had come to this country, had no money, and that's why they were out in the street begging for food, begging for a little bit of pesos in order to buy some tacos. My mother, instead of walking away and saying, I don't have anything, because again, we are a working class family, said, here's some money, but I'm gonna take it to an extra step, because she was working at a community-based organization, and said, we're gonna get you resources. Because this little bit of money I can give you right now is gonna last you a day, less than that. But the resources that we can provide you at the organization that I work with can last you a lot more and help you build a life here. These are the same people that are coming to our city right now. The same people that are asking to come into this country looking for opportunities because they're fleeing a variety of issues that our families also fled when they came here. Whether it's poverty, whether it's violence, whether it's a lack of job opportunities, whether it's just struggling to survive, they are coming here for many of the same reasons why the rest of our families came here. I'm here standing in representation of the Latino caucus, a Latino caucus in the state that has fought alongside the governor to ensure that Illinois is literally the most welcoming state in our country. And we do it, yes, because of our proximity to our immigration stories. I know how my parents and my grandparents got into this country. I know that my grandfather was a bracero. I know the struggles that they had, the racism that they faced. And the reality is the racism that we continue to face. The xenophobia, the hatred, but that is not how we meet our brothers and sisters who are asking us for help. I've seen the best in our citizens, the best of our residents, when we've been there for the Afghan refugees who came to this country, the Ukrainian refugees that came to this country, the amount of people that have sent donations, the amount of people that have signed up to volunteers, that is the best of us. And that's what we're here trying to do. with government, with community organizations, with community at large, who have also stepped up and donated and said, hey, we're here to help. I'm grateful for the governor for making sure that we're trying to bring in the resources, as Governor Abbott has decided that he wants to wash his hands clean of this, as though you can wash your hand clean of humanity. I won't talk about Texas because the reality is I'm very proud to be from Illinois. I'm very proud to have the governor that I have, the representation that we have of people that are fighting to ensure that the voices of the people that are coming from our communities are heard. And I'm glad that we get to have the conversations and plan together to ensure that we are meeting the moment and making sure that people are being received in language, with language competent individuals and support, making sure that people are culturally competent in what's going on and understanding the traumas that people arriving to this country have gone through. I'm proud to be able to continue to do this work because this is what we do as human beings. This is what we do when we actually demonstrate our values and our beliefs. We support each other. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to welcome Governor Pritzker back up to the podium.
Happy to take questions from members of the media.
Governor, can you provide any details on the infrastructure that you said would be built? Could that be something like the McCormick Place that we did for COVID?
No, it's not specifically building buildings, but it is assisting local folks, organizations on the ground, NGOs, as well as local government in whatever it is that they need. And when we talk about infrastructure, it's soft infrastructure that we're talking about, although occasionally it might turn into, actually, helping with something that is hard infrastructure, but it's not building new facilities.
Governor, if the Texas governor is engaging in human trafficking or kidnapping, as you put it, should sanctuary state AGs or the DOJ weigh in?
Well, we are still examining and interviewing the folks who have come to Illinois and listening to their stories about whether or not they willingly got on these buses, knew where they were going, were given the information appropriate, and the legal authorities in the state of Illinois, specifically our Attorney General, the General Counsel's office and the Governor's office, the Corporation Counsel for the City of Chicago, all looking into whether or not there is criminal liability for what they've done.
Well, we heard that they signed waivers. They knew exactly where they were going. Some wanted to go to Chicago because they have family members in the surrounding states. So you're saying that some might have been kidnapped?
I'm suggesting to you that even if someone signed a piece of paper, if it was in English and they don't speak English, if it was in Spanish and they don't read or write, that's not an appropriate way to, for the governor of Texas to release himself from liability.
Governor, is there any legal action that could be taken either in federal court to sue the Texas governor to in any way, stop this action, or is there any way to stop the buses at the border?
We're absolutely looking into all of those options, but let's be clear, we are going to take care of the people who are on the buses when they arrive in Illinois. The question of what consequence comes to the governor of Texas or to the state of Texas is another question altogether, but we're working on that.
Governor, how long can the state, city, and county sustain these buses coming before federal help is going to be vital?
Well, we are seeking federal help. I think I mentioned in my remarks, and of course I have been hard at work, working not only with our congressional delegation, but directly in conversations between my staff and the White House to make sure that we get the resources that we need, whatever it is that's available. There are appropriations that have been made at the federal level for help for cities and for states. DC received some, New York received some. We're trying to access those resources and anything else that the federal government will give us. But we're working hard to make sure that we get resources so we can sustain, the provision of services for these folks.
But are you at any point, or are you coming to a point where you're going to either have to go to the legislature or the city come to the city council and ask for more money to sustain this effort?
I can't speak for the city, but I can say at least at the state level at the moment that's not the case. We have resources. We built welcoming centers. We have funds for welcoming centers and for all the provision of human services in the state. But absolutely, there is a point at which that we wouldn't have the resources to continue. And you've seen thousands and thousands arriving in New York and in D.C. And it's an enormous burden on those cities. Mayor, do you want to talk about that?
There are some federal resources available through FEMA, but ultimately, if this continues in the pattern that it is, it's not going to be enough. And obviously, we have resources that we have reprogrammed to, I think as the senator said so eloquently, to meet the moment. But if this moment continues for weeks and months, there's going to be, there has to be more. There's a finite number of resources that are available through FEMA. We intend to get every single penny that we possibly can. But I meant what I said earlier. If monies are going to the state of Texas and they're abdicating the responsibilities that they agreed to get those monies need to be reprogrammed and sent to states and cities like Chicago, like New York, like Washington, D.C. New York, to date, as of yesterday, had 11,000 people that had come to New York City. I mean, contemplate that number. And we need, D.C. needs more assistance. And obviously I know that there's work being done by the White House and some of the executive agencies to look to other resources. That can't happen fast enough. So we're going to continue to be in conversation with them to let them know what is happening on the ground here. I had a series of very productive conversations when I was in D.C. on Friday, but we're not going to take our foot off the gas to say that we need a comprehensive plan from the federal government. And again, we all know what the reality is. This is a national problem. It needs a national solution. And we, as cities and states, cannot be left to fend to ourselves.
Mayor, the mayor of Elk Grove Village said that he was sent 90 people because of the marathon coming up. Why not open up McCormick Place again?
Well,
if we keep 11,000, say as many as
I wouldn't put those two things together. I've had very productive conversations with both the mayor of Elk Grove Village and the mayor of Burr Ridge. We agreed that we're going to communicate on a regular basis. We've made those staff connections. Nobody was sent to Elk Grove Village because of the marathon or something else. Look, the reality is we have a finite number of resources here in the city of Chicago, in the county of Cook. And so there will be a need to expand the number of communities across the state that may have to step up. And as you heard from Secretary Ho, in the first instance, the plan is going back to hotels and other spaces that have welcomed other refugees that have come to Chicago. But this has got to be something that we are in deep communication and collaboration with our partners across the region, because that's what the time demands.
Last question. Mayor Lightfoot.
But I might add, just with 3 to 12 hours notice, 3 to 24 hours notice, that's a difficult thing to do, to communicate across the entire region in such a short period of time.
Last question. Governor Pritzker, does anything in the Safety Act need to be changed before January 1st? And do you want any specific changes?
Well, let's just set the record straight with everybody. The Safety Act is designed to keep murderers and domestic abusers, violent criminals in jail, and to address the problem of the current system, which allows those people, murderers, domestic abusers, and so on, to buy their way out of jail by just paying bail. So we're addressing the problem that exists today, making sure that we're, also addressing the problem of a single mother who shoplifted diapers for her baby, who is put in jail and kept there for 6 months because she doesn't have a couple of $100s to pay for bail. So that's what the Safety Act is about. Are there changes, adjustments that need to be made? Of course, and there have been adjustments made, and there will continue to be. Laws are not immutable. They are not, there with no change that's ever made to them. Of course,
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.